Welcome to Speak Out, Stand Out by Green Communications, where we're learning how to help our kids become better communicators. We believe our voices are the strongest asset we have, and our mission is to empower the next generation to use their voices to make a difference in the world around them. Whether you are a parent, an educator, or are just invested in today's youth, we hope this podcast will help you build confidence in our future, one voice at a time.
Welcome back to Speak Out, Stand Out. I'm Elizabeth Green, and today we have Jules Stevenson joining us. Jules is an expert math teacher with lots of NLP and coaching training. She is passionate about education, but feels like we've lost our way with the obsession on assessments instead of deep learning and curiosity. So her business focuses on giving families the resources they need to really give our children the best foundations that they can. And today's topic is a little unusual. It's a little different than what we normally talk about, but still involves communications with our children. And we're talking about math particularly, and math anxiety and the things that go along with that. And I am really interested in this topic as a parent who nearly cried last week trying to help my fifth grader with math homework. So I'm excited to hear, Jules, about ways we can really support our children, and even in a subject that is very hard for a lot of us to understand. So thanks for being here today, first of all.
No, that's good. Thank you for having me. It's going to be interesting to see what comes out and where this conversation goes.
Absolutely. Well, Jules, let's start. First of all, how did you become an expert in this realm?
So I've done probably 10 years in classrooms in Melbourne. I started in a school that was really low socioeconomics. I did my first 3.5 years there. So we had kids coming in that might not have eaten for a couple of days, or there might have been some family violence, things like that. And so trying to ram maths down their throats really wasn't an option. You had to start thinking about how you can do things more creatively and differently to engage. We also had a lot of, it's all changed now, but kids with a lot of diagnosis sitting behind them as well due to the family trauma and all that sort of stuff going on. So we had, luckily, the government threw quite a lot of funding at us in terms of different coaches and things like that. So I was actually really lucky to have some real experts in problem solving and hands-on learning and all of those elements of maths right from the get-go. So from that, we started trying to, and communication was a big thing because one of the programs we were starting was front-loading language. So actually giving kids the access to the language of mathematics, because it's, you go throwing trigonometry or even our measurement conversions and all that sort of thing. For a lot of kids, it is a second language. And so we had a lot of people giving us a lot of help with having them, so as soon as they heard those words, they didn't completely internalize and shut down and be like, I'm stupid, I don't know what that means. Everyone else in this room knows what that means. I don't know what that means. It must be me. And so we really were able to start tracking that and seeing improvement, and confidence was the biggest thing that improved, because that anxiety started to melt away because they'd been taken out for half an hour before a lesson that week and front loaded with all of the language. So that was sort of how I started. From there, I moved to the select entry system. Now we have 4 select entry schools in Melbourne. They're all examined in year 8 and then hand-picked and sent to the 4 schools. So that was the equivalent for you guys, 14-year-olds taking that point, and then they start their senior journey in a select entry school. So that was highly academic, but it also was high pressure, and there was all of this social stuff going on in the classrooms and dynamics, and the kids had ranked themselves against everyone else in terms of their maths and their ability and how smart they were. And what was happening was we were getting some really interesting behavioural issues from the 15 and 16-year-old boys who had decided that maths wasn't their thing. And so how we flipped that, how I flipped it in my classrooms was that I would assess them at the start of a unit, and then I would assess them at the end, but I wouldn't give them their final mark. I would only give them their percentage of improvement. So suddenly these boys that were playing out were getting the greatest marks because they had learnt more, because the kids that were always getting the 100% had already walked in with 95% anyway, because they'd been so heavily tutored previously to get into the school. So we sort of flipped that for them around how they were as learners and what their achievement could look like. And it changed that dynamic immediately. Like within a month, we had no behavioural issues in my classes. And it was just about celebrating them as learners and what they were capable of, rather than this ranking system that wasn't even fair to start with. But they'd internalised all of these beliefs about themselves based on that.
That's amazing.
So I'm so grateful for starting where I did, but then also going from one extreme to the other, to one of the highest performing schools in the state. And then from there, I moved into our private system, which was just completely different again, completely test-driven. If it wasn't on the test, the kids would not listen. There was no love of learning. There was nothing. It was only on what that assessment would say. And I started to really see kids being anxious about anyone knowing where they were at. There was, all this secrecy and please don't tell my parents, and you'd have parents in parent-teacher interviews or meetings in tears because their child wasn't the best and they were paying huge figures. And we're talking $30,000, $35,000 a year at this point for your 12 and 13-year-old. And they're not getting results. So the pressure there, again, was about assessment. It wasn't about learning. And I think that was probably the worst I saw for maths anxiety. I was complete shutdown. But it was very subtle because the society expectations of that environment meant I couldn't have an explosion and I couldn't put the chair through the window and I couldn't do any of that stuff. So I had to shut down and wouldn't speak to you. So I would do things like I'd just go sit next to them and be like, hey, how you going? What do you know? What's that?
Yeah.
Sort of really take away, like I just was never at the front of the room, which was a problem because everyone else was at the front of the room and I was different. And it's like these kids, they just disappear, and you're halfway through the year and you get a test and they get 20%. And you go, I have no idea that was going to happen because they've just been so secretive and shut down.
Yeah.
And then I went to our alternative education sector for a while, and that was just mental. So I was like, no, I don't have the skills to deal with that level of not necessarily neurodiversity, but undiagnosed issues, and you're dealing with 16 and 17-year-olds on their pathway out of the system, some homeless. Like there were extreme things, and I was just like, this isn't what I've trained for and this isn't where I am. So yeah, I've sort of stepped away from the system, realising that I don't really fit, but how can I help families still be able to build that relationship with their kids and to have really transparent, open, honest communication with the schools around where's my kid at? What do they need? What are they good at? Like, how do we strategically help them? Because what happens is everyone goes into overwhelm and you have to do everything. Like, then you get pushback from your kids going, I know this stuff. I don't need help with this stuff. I need help with this bit, but I can't communicate because now I'm so frustrated because now there's a dynamic between me and my parent where I'm not doing what they want and they're unhappy with me and everyone's stressed and no one knows what to do. And yeah, it skyrockets.
I know exactly what you're talking about when it comes to that. So you're saying math anxiety is a real thing. Like, it's not that we just have people like myself who struggle with math and don't like math, right? But there is
Yep.
more to it than that, a deeper thing that we're afraid of it or afraid of failing. What do you, what is?
Well, it's all of that, but the psychometric, so 1972, 1976, they actually made it a psycho test that you can actually be diagnosed with math anxiety.
Wow.
So that research was done in America and the UK. In Australia, no one wants to talk about it. It's like, you're crazy and it doesn't happen. So yes, it is completely diagnosable. They did it with college students, and it was about, it's not just about not liking the subject, but the incessant worry when an assessment is coming up, or the going blank once you sit in your assessment and you can't think of all those things that you know that you've just gone through the night before and you felt confident. That just sort of like wipes from your mind. Again, a lot of behavioural stuff. So I don't like this. I don't know what's going on. Everyone else knows what's going on. So it's that anxious, catastrophizing and the going through your mind over and over again. I'm dumb. It's me. I can't do this. I'm going to throw my stuff and walk out. I'm going to let off at whoever's near me. I'm going to tell my parents to shut up and get away from me. Like it's that pressure cooker of anxiety on something that everyone's told me it's really important. I have to be really good at maths. Maths is important. And so we're layering all of this stuff, sometimes subtly, sometimes overtly, that it's important. You're going to be ranked. It's a competition. We will judge you for the rest of your life, And the thing that would break my heart, I would have back-to-back parent-teacher interviews. I would talk for hours on end. It was like speed dating. It was terrible. But you would have so many parents going, oh, I was never good at maths. And now it's become an identity thing. They're taking that through, spelling and maths. I can't spell and I'm bad at maths. That's who I am. It's like, no one just found a way to communicate to you that it made sense. So we've got so much going on with maths.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting, the math anxiety, because I'm in America and have never heard of this before either. So I don't think it's something that is talked about much here either. It's just that you're either good at math or you're not, that kind of vibe. And I think the assessment system is probably a little bit different. I'm just assuming it is, but I know here in America, the big thing comes into play when it comes to college admissions exams and scoring high enough in the math section of your ACT or SAT or whatever test they're taking. And so what do you say? I mean, how do we communicate with our kids, and what kind of resources are out there, especially for the family that's either their kids go to school or they're homeschooling, and math is a struggle all the way around? Because I know one of the things you talk about too is that the building blocks are so important in math. If you don't have the basics down, you're going to struggle with all the rest of it. So it's a different subject than many in that regard. So how do we communicate with our kids and avoid math anxiety or help them overcome it?
So one of the ways it's in knowing, so in Australia at the moment, your kid will do a maths test and all you see is a percentage as a parent. You can't get access to the test in a lot of schools, and you certainly don't get any feedback or plan that's made from that test. So if you actually went to the school and said, look, what exactly was my child able to demonstrate and not yet able to demonstrate?
Mm-hmm.
Because half of the anxiety is that, and for people as well, you just didn't learn the content yet in the time frame that was allowed for you. But it doesn't mean that you can't then work on it after they've moved on that topic. And so actually asking a school to support you in when you should be, what elements still need to work on. And you can use that time at home, whether that's through worksheets or games or things like that. One thing I've been really playing with is using chat to come up with integrated learning ideas for how to tie maths into interests. So the Maths in Music is a set of things I'm doing to help people in harmonics and in sound production. There's so much physics and maths in that. In sport, in athletics, how our body works, our nutrition, there's all our conversions, it's relevant, I'm planning my meals. It's not just, and I'm a member of the homeschool community as well. My plan is to homeschool my 4-year-old. So when I see in a lot of the conversations, it's like, oh, well, they do the the weekly budget, and we do a few things like that. But what I get passionate about and start to challenge people on is on that approach, you're not actually unpacking what maths is. We're not taking in a whole bunch of information. We're not sorting what's relevant, what's not relevant. We're not then making, a decision to try something and then assessing if it worked and then adjusting our process. So it's actually stripping maths back and going, it's actually just a set of problem solving strategies that we have and that we're learning in the content of mathematics. However, if you don't get place value or something back when you're 7 or 8, you're going to have problems with decimals when you're 13 and 14. If you're not able to spot patterns and good at pattern detection again at your 7 and 8, you're going to have problems at algebra from 12 to 17. So they're building blocks of skills, but not necessarily content. And I think we overload content just to hope that the kids will suddenly get it. And therefore, those key outcomes. Now, I don't know the American system, but in Australia, the maximum number of outcomes for a year we have at any level is 30. Yet, in 180 days of teaching, we slam all of this stuff on them that actually isn't part of that base curriculum that is needed in their senior years. So if we just stripped it back and we took more time on those concepts and we got them thinking and we made it interesting and relevant to them, I don't think the anxiety would be anywhere near where it is. And as parents, even at home, going, okay, well, you love soccer. Let's look at the angles of soccer. Let's look at the pace that people run and run forward and back. And let's take the statistics of how many shots were scored or strikes taken. Sorry, soccer's not my big thing. But, you can actually start seeing the real world connections all the time. And where does maths fit here? Where does maths fit there? And that's a conversation that's not a hard thing to do as a parent at home.
Right.
It's, what are interest rates doing at the moment? What's inflation doing? Oh, let's talk about percentages. It's not sitting down and drilling them with a million questions in the book because they get that at school. But how can you support, if you know what they need, how do you access a way to give them that in a far more nurturing, caring kind of environment, like a homeschooler would almost? I think as soon as, and that's the thing I'm getting with parents is, oh, I don't have time to sit and tutor my kid. And you're like, no, you don't have to. They get that at school. They need a caring parent who loves them to go, hey, what do you need and how can we help? And, do you know what this means? And let me think about where we use that in the real world so I can put some context around it for you.
Yeah, I think that is so important because, for example, my oldest son is 14, and when both of them, my kids are 14 and 10, and both of them say things like, when am I ever going to use this? When am I ever going to need to know this? And you're right, they're probably never going to have to actually sit down. I know in my adult life, other than helping my children with homework, I've never had to sit down and do an algebraic formula, right? But there are foundations of that I do use in my daily life. We just don't think about it like that. So I think that is so important, helping them understand that it's so much more than just being able to figure out what X means in this equation.
Yeah, so if you actually you spot patterns. That's what algebra is trying to teach you. Can you follow the pattern and undo an equation so that if something breaks at work, can you work backwards on how to fix it? because you know how you put it together. Can you undo it now, fix the problem, and then rebuild it? And I think we just need to really chunk up to that really high global sort of level of going, okay, this is what this is, and this is what that is. And okay, a linear graph. Well, if you'd like to go into business, you probably should know when you're going to make some profit and when a marketing product is working, and tracking your projections, and you want to get a loan off that business. So you've got it, and actually just starting to really go, this is how this stuff works in the real world.
Yeah.
So you can actually answer that question. No, you're not going to sit down and work the sign of a bloody triangle. No, you're not going to do that.
Well, I think this is really great. So, what other tips do you have then for we need to find a way to tie it back to our kids' interests, right? We need to understand first and foremost what their struggles are, so that we can help them with those foundations that maybe they've skipped or missed, not skipped, but missed. But what do you say to parents that have kids that go to school, public school, private school, whatever it is, that we can't just stop and say, all right, I think you didn't quite understand this. Let's go back and revisit this. You have that flexibility in the homeschool environment to be able to focus on that. What do you say to the parents that well, the class has already moved on. They're on to something else. How do we get you caught up, but also without inducing anxiety over it?
Yeah, and that's when it needs a homework plan. What is our plan? And pushing out that timeline. Your big assessments are for college. Yes?
Correct. So they kids in 10th, 11th, or 11th and 12th grade take one of two tests that are national exams, and those dictate the colleges that they would potentially be admitted to or not.
Okay, so my answer is that's your timeline. Your children have until that point to get it. They don't have to have it captured in that 3 weeks that everyone else is doing. You've got till the rest of the year, till their end of year exams, then they can do their revision. It's just pushing that timeline out. And I'm a huge fan of Carol Dweck and her mindset work. Using the word yet is the most powerful thing you can do to your child. Oh, I don't get it. No, you don't get it yet. Because then you're opening that brain function and that communication, and they're not then defeated. Oh, I don't get it. No, you don't get it yet. So what can we do? Where can we go next? Blah, blah, blah. Just, to actually pace you through. We've got the rest of the year to get this. The class will move on. You'll learn new stuff, but we're just going to spend a bit more time, on a Saturday afternoon. We're just going to every half an hour. And we have our learning curve. So at the peak of our learning curve is normally when we assess, and then it decays really rapidly. So, that's how we run our maths education. If you can actually revisit things every week or every second week to the end of the year, what happens is that decay never happens. So it's actually got far greater chance of becoming long-term knowledge than I memorized it for the test, and then as soon as I finished the test, it left my brain and I moved on to the next thing. If you actually just keep and then your revision for your end of year exams or end of semester exams suddenly is really easy because you just kept practicing it anyway.
Yeah.
So the power of homework and what can happen at home to support the learning is huge.
Yeah, for sure. And I love what you said, just adding the word yet, and that makes such a difference. And, one of our big focuses is building confidence in our kids through communication. And that is such a powerful way to do it in such a simple word. So I love that you shared that. And I think it's also hard. Go ahead.
Sorry. And just the last one that I would put in there is how can. Using how can I do this? How can I do that? How can I help you? That changes your mind, your focus as well. And not the thing, but how. How are we going to solve this problem? How can we work together? How can we make a plan? And having your kids involved in that. How can we make a plan to use the next month at home to catch up on those things you didn't get yet?
Yeah, that's huge. I think as parents too, we oftentimes, I know personally, I feel overwhelmed, like you said. There's so many classes they're taking, so many different assignments, so many different grades, and all of that. And we many times have more than one child, so trying to support them in the little bit of time that we have in the evenings or on the weekends can be difficult. But I think that a lot of times we get hung up on the grades. And maybe that's just because it was instilled in us as kids that, you want to make sure you're getting the A honor roll or the B honor roll or whatever it is. And if they're not getting that in a subject that they're struggling with, that it's okay. It doesn't mean that, that they're a failure. And I feel like that kids feel that way too about the actual grades that they get. Like you were talking about, especially being ranked in a class. I can imagine the chaos that causes in a child's brain to feel, to know where they rank in the class as far as skill level.
Yep.
That's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, and we've got real problems here. Melbourne was the most locked down city in the world through COVID. We got lots of problems, but now nationally, we've got a third of the kids sitting. We do the NAPLAN testing every second year, the standardised testing, and now a third are said to be below the level of where they should be. So that means you may have 8 or 9 kids in your class who are struggling, and it's not just 1 or 2 anymore. And even teaching, 10 years ago, I would always say you had 5 years range in every class between the kid who was struggling most and the kid who was, achieving the highest. And so that's that ranking and that knowing and that comparing that they do for others, which may or may not be accurate, but they've decided that's how it is completely damaging. And that's why I sit with parent after parent going, I was never good at maths and I can't help them and blah, blah, blah. And, in their 40s and 50s going, you did do it because you got through it. You're always coaching them about their confidence so that they actually feel okay to help their kids.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, just last week, I was almost in tears over trying to remember how to do certain parts of the homework that he had to do and Googling it and watching YouTube videos and all of that. So I think sometimes it's just easy to get frustrated and to think the same thing that they say, oh, you're never going to need this. You don't really need this. Let's just get through it. But you're right. It is part of our daily life, especially if we can tie it to things that they're interested in to see there is an importance in knowing this and understanding this concept. It will benefit you in life. So I think that's important too. So, well, Jules, I think this has really been helpful. Honestly, the most powerful thing is using the word yet. I have marked that down and underlined it. I am going to start putting that into my vocabulary much more with my kids. Is there any last thing that you want to share, or other tips that you have for parents as we're, trying to build our kids' confidence and, like I said, especially in a subject they might struggle with?
Yeah, just take a breath, love your kids in that conversation and just go, we'll get through this. Just doesn't have to be today, right now.
Yeah.
But we'll get through this. It'll be okay. And they need to know that you're a safe place so that they can, because, our 14-year-old will not come out of his room, and then we get results saying, you got 35%, and then you try and help him and you get complete pushback of don't even speak to me.
Yeah.
Because he's already, he's so embarrassed about the fact that he lives with a maths teacher and he won't ask for help. So he's completely, so that's our challenge. We all, I'm sitting here going, oh, you need to do this to your kids. I still have those challenges. It's just a time thing. You've got to just keep chipping away at it. And I think we just give it full force in the moment. And, okay, I've got 30 minutes and we're going to get this. And the kid goes, whoa, hang on, what? No, right. I'm not ready. Well, I'm tired. I've had a big day as well. Or I'm worried about something that's going to happen tomorrow. And it all just skyrockets. So, yeah, take a breath. You've got time. You've got so much time.
That's great perspective, and definitely something that, we all need to remember as we go into homework, or even if your kids are homeschooled and sitting down with them and working on lessons. Doesn't have to be today. I love it. Well, yeah. Jules, if anybody's interested in working with you, I know we'll put all of your links and everything in the show notes, but you do offer private coaching?
Consulting more. So I can actually do assessments for people and give you those strengths and weaknesses. And then I will have those integrated cards packs available with assessments and stuff. So you can actually go, oh, my kid loves the saxophone. I'll buy them a pack and we can see what maths we can get out of that and the physics and everything else. And so they're available as well.
That's fantastic. So we'll definitely link to all of that so you can go check those things out, and be sure to follow Jules on social media. Check out our website. We really appreciate your insight. Again, it's such a unique conversation to have about communications. I never thought math would be a topic we'd talk about, but I'm so glad we did. I think this is going to be really helpful to a lot of people.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
If you are looking for more ways to build communication skills in your kids, grab our free mini lesson on how to craft a polished and professional speech out of thin air, along with 52 fun prompts so your kids can practice every single week. You can find that along with info about our upcoming public speaking and debate courses for kids at greencommunicationsedu.com.